discover how an unexpected whisper transformed this billionaire CEO's loneliness at a wedding. Ethan stood at the edge of the dance floor, his sharp suit and polished shoes a mute testament to his wealth and success. The chaotically joyful laughter of his sister and her friends echoed around him like an alien language. While they swirled in a world colored by connection and shared joy, he submerged deeper into the icy waters of solitude. Here he was, a self-made billionaire, the architect of a tech empire, yet drowning in an ocean of loneliness. He raised a glass for the toast, the crystal shimmering against the dimly lit ballroom, and the sound of clinking glasses filled the air, but it felt foreign, an invitation to a celebration that was not for him. A flicker of unease crept up his spine as he listened to each heartfelt vow exchanged, the promises of a future woven with love, affection, feelings that had long been eclipsed by deadlines and boardroom meetings. The whispers of the past echoed in his mind, reminiscent of laughter shared over childhood puzzles and campfire stories. With each crescendo of joyful noise, memories collided with the stark contrast of his isolated empire. Today, as his sister pledged her life to another, he felt the weight of his choices more acutely. Was it all worth it? The relentless ambition, the personal sacrifices? As he leaned against the garden railing, attempting to shield himself from the raucous jubilation, he overheard the words of a nearby elderly guest waft through the air. True wealth is in the connections we nurture, not the fortune we amass. The thunderclap of that simple statement rocked him, sparking the embers of a long, varied conflict. It ignited questions of loyalty, the very essence of success he once prided himself on. Here he was, standing in a garden where his sister mingled with family and friends, while his own connections were thin. He scrutinized the choices that led him here, wondering if he had simply traded relationships for corporate ascendance, for accolades, for loneliness. Before his spiraling thoughts could consume him, he stumbled upon Mia, a childhood friend painting her dreams in vibrant canvases, unlike his monotone life filled with spreadsheets and forecasts. Their embrace felt electric with nostalgia, and their laughter broke the chains of separation. Yet, as they reminisced, she gently prodded, prompting him to confront the hollowness of his golden trophies. He felt vulnerable, defenses crumbling as he shared fragments of his life in Silicon Valley. She could see it, a yearning for emotional connection behind the facade of bravado and fortune. Could he truly forge a life beyond the glory of wealth? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow.
If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as laughter intertwined with happiness around them, an urgent secret unfurled. A revelation about his family that threatened to upend everything he thought he knew. His past curled around each revelation, tightening its hold, swaying his foundations and calling into question his ambitious pursuits. Torn between loyalty to his family's legacy and the seductive allure of pursuit, he felt anguish climb within him, the weight of exhausting decisions pressing down with merciless ferocity. As the night deepened, Ethan wrestled silently with the gnawing realization that every toast and laugh only exacerbated his solitude. He stood at a crossroads, the echoes of familial love reverberating against the glass towers of his life. Each moment he remained disengaged, magnifying the heartache tethered to his choices. Could he forge bonds anew? Could vulnerability replace the ego-driven ambition he had so fiercely defended? As uncertainty loomed larger, he grappled with lingering fear. At what cost would he redefine success? The shadows of his decisions loomed ominously, amplifying the urgency to evolve, to connect. This was not just a wedding, it was a reckoning, a final stir before he plunged into unknown waters, caught between what he had and what he longed for. Ethan's heart pounded beneath the weight of revelation. The cascading memories intertwined with the deeper stirrings of regret surged like a tidal wave threatening to drown him. His mind raced with the enormity of the moment, grappling with the intertwining threads of family loyalty and personal ambition. Could life really exist beyond the tech empire that had consumed him whole? Or was he too far gone, too entrenched in the image he had constructed around himself? Mia, with her carefree spirit, nudged him gently from this spiraling introspection. You know, Ethan, sometimes we need to tear down the walls we've built ourselves. You could use some color in your life, she said, her eyes sparkling with a blend of mischief and sincerity. He chuckled lightly, yet her words resonated like a siren call reverberating within him. Color. What an unusual concept to a man whose achievements gleamed purely in shades of gray. Was it possible to paint over the muted landscapes of his life? To infuse shaky connections with vibrancy, warmth, and authenticity? With every glance around the bustling ballroom, he saw the tapestry of dreams woven into the lives of those he cherished, his sister glowing with possibility, his parents enveloped in the joy of family, friends radiating warmth. Ethan yearned for such richness, yet he felt like an outsider observing from afar.
The truths of the night settled like heavy blankets of anxiety upon his shoulders, whispering bittersweet reminders of his unfulfilled potential for connection. As the song changed and couples swayed to new rhythms, he felt an impulsive spark. What if he took a single step toward earnestness? Could he confront his estrangement with family and friends? How would he resolve the dichotomy of his life, the powerful CEO striving for success against the vulnerable man craving closeness? After an introspective pause, he made his decision. Gripping his glass, he pushed through the crowd, searching for the familiar faces that felt so distant yet so close. The dance floor transformed into a battleground, one where he felt ready to reclaim the relationships he had unwittingly cast aside in pursuit of his empire. "Mom! Dad!" he called out, cutting through the conversations around him. Their heads turned, surprise drawing their attention. For the first time in ages, he felt an ache of longing mingle with the fading echoes of loneliness. "What is it, Ethan?" his mother asked, concern rapidly replacing her initial surprise. "Can we talk? About everything?" he replied earnestly, feeling his throat tighten with vulnerability. Uncertain eyes met hopeful ones. He could read their mixed emotions, relief, apprehension, curiosity. Yet they stepped toward him, and he held on to that moment, fiercely determined to breach the chasms he had so meticulously excavated over the years. As they moved to the quieter side of the garden, his heart raced with the gravity of what was to come. Years of silence resided between them, an aching chasm requiring words to bridge it. "I've realized something tonight," he began, a shaky breath escaping his lips. "I forcefully pursued the idea of success at the expense of our relationship. I thought wealth would make me whole, but instead it only contributed to my isolation. I know. I need you all in my life." Words surged forth, pouring out raw and unfiltered. He described the loneliness that suffocated him, the shadows that followed him in the boardroom. He spoke of his exhaustion, his longing for connection. The very admission felt liberating and terrifying. With a burgeoning resolve igniting within him, Ethan felt their hands clasp around his own. In this moment, he recognized that true riches lay in the vulnerability he had shunned, the connections he had almost sacrificed in the guise of ambition. "Will you help me rebuild what I've neglected?" he implored, his voice trembling. "Help me paint over these gray walls?" Looming above him, the expansive universe of decisions and potential relationships hung precariously, sparking with possibility. His family's warmth offered shimmering hints of hope. Could this new journey be the key to unlocking a life he had long repressed? The weight of his existence shifted, and with it came the harrowing thrill of what lay ahead. As he stepped back, glancing into the night sky glittering with stars, he knew the struggle was only beginning. Could he face the ghosts of his past choices and truly embark on this path toward connection? The urgency of transformation hummed in the air around him as he confronted the looming challenge of vulnerability. In that fleeting moment of connection, the world inside Ethan trembled, beckoning him toward the choices he had yet to make. What awaited him if he dared to follow this unfolding route of openness and self-discovery? The edge was close, and one leap could lead him into the embrace of a life he never thought possible. The night air thickened with anticipation as Ethan stood before his family. With every heartbeat, he felt the weight of the moment press down on him, yet there was a flicker of hope igniting within his chest, a spark of color that promised to break through the gray shadows of his past. His father's grip lingered on his shoulder, a sturdy anchor in the swirling tide of emotions. "It's never too late to change, son," his father said, his voice steady, filled with the wisdom of years lost and regained. Ethan met his gaze, searching for the sincerity buried beneath layers of unspoken history, and found it, reassurance that he wasn't embarking on this journey alone. What now? The question loomed larger than ever as he digested the love shining in his parents' eyes. How could he foster this connection anew, ensure it outshone his ambitions? In the whirlwind of his corporate existence, he'd always viewed relationships as transactional, contingent on what others could do for him or what they represented as assets. Now, that perspective seemed hollow.
I want to reconnect with my sister, too, he confessed, glancing toward the dance floor where she spun with laughter echoing in the air. The sight of her joy was intoxicating, and a deep-seated longing welled within him. He had missed so many milestones, been absent during critical moments that shaped her life, and the regret threatened to drown him again. "Let's get her, Ethan," his mother chimed, the tenderness in her voice contradicting the years that had passed in silence. "This is a family moment. Just take her hand and pull her in." With a nod of determination, Ethan moved toward the edges of the dance floor, where Mia still twirled, her energy captivating. Anxiety threaded its way back through him. What would he say? How would she react? What if she viewed this one step as insufficient after years of neglect? "Hey, Mia," he called, his voice breaking the rhythmic beats of the music. She turned to him, a smile blooming across her face, and in that instant, he felt the constrictions of his corporate persona loosen just enough to allow authenticity to weave its way through. "Ethan, you made it over," she exclaimed, an exuberance radiating from her, filling the air with lightness. "What's up?"
"I was hoping we could talk," he said, the weight of the moment pressuring him to articulate feelings he had buried for too long. "I want to rekindle what we've lost. I miss my sister." Her smile faltered, then brightened again, reflecting a mix of surprise, delight, and something deeper, curiosity. "I'd love that," she replied tentatively, but he could see the remnants of skepticism in her stance, a defiance born from years of feeling like the overlooked sibling, overshadowed by Ethan's relentless ambition. Indecision flickered within him, a hesitation about how to convey everything swirling inside him. Mia had always seemed so young and free, and he now recognized how that youthful exuberance grew in direct contrast to the constraints he had shackled himself with. "Can we go somewhere quieter? I really want to share where my mind is at, and how I've been, well, lost." He saw her eyes narrow slightly, suspicion curling the edges of her expression. Yet, as they moved to a private corner, away from the intoxicating rhythms of the celebration, Ethan felt the gentle nudge of vulnerability pushing him forward. "I've been selfish," he began, words spilling forth like long-neglected secrets finding release. "All these years I was so caught up in my dream of success that I didn't study the roots of our family tree, didn't realize I was suffocating our bond. I can't change the past, but I want to start anew. I want us to be close again, Mia." Her gaze softened, brief flickers of recognition dancing across her features. "It'll be a lot of work, you know," she warned, but her voice held a hint of warmth, a challenge laced with intrigue. "I'm ready for that work. For once, I'm not afraid of the effort," he countered, a confidence swelling within him, stirring the colors he so desperately sought to embrace. As their conversation began to weave tales of childhood memories, punctuated by laughter and nostalgia, Ethan felt a transformation take shape. Each shared recollection served as brushstrokes, painting the tapestry of a relationship long neglected. But just as they began to delve deeper into the threads that united them, a disapproving figure emerged from the shadows, a familiar voice tainted with expectation, cutting through their fragile moment. His mentor, Chase, materialized with a hawkish intensity, questioning the evolution in his path. "Ethan, what's this about? You're wasting precious time. We have a deal to finalize in the morning." Ethan felt the conflict hang heavy in the air, swirling between his thirst for personal reconnection and the relentless demands of his corporate empire. What would he choose? Chase's presence threatened to pull him back into the old life, a world anchored in ambition rather than love. As he glanced back at Mia, her expression flickered from curiosity to understanding, yet the path forward remained fraught with competing loyalties. Would he turn away from the promise of a renewed bond? Or would he take a stand for a life enriched by connection, even if it meant confronting the expectations that had held him captive for so long? The moment pulsed with tension, a looming question enveloped. Which life would define Ethan moving forward? The tension in the air crackled like static electricity, pulling Ethan's attention between the weight of familial bonds and the sharp edges of professional expectations that cut through the fragile atmosphere. Chase stood before him like a specter of his former self, a polished facade hiding an undercurrent of ambition that felt increasingly foreign to Ethan. "Chase, Ethan began, struggling to find the right words, the urge to defend his choices, battling against the profound need to embrace the connection he had long ignored. "Save it," Chase interrupted, a dismissive wave of his hand silencing Ethan's tentative explanation. "You know how competitive our market is. We can't afford distractions, especially with the merger just around the corner. You're in the spotlight. Don't let sentimentality cloud your judgment." Ethan felt the familiar grip of doubt and obligation squeezing his chest. But beneath that, an ember of defiance began to stir, an acknowledgement that the indifference that once fueled his ambition no longer felt like a source of power. Mia shifted beside him, her brow furrowed as if she sensed the internal struggle raging within him. He looked at her, the innocence and warmth in her eyes grounding him, reminding him of the laughter they once shared, the connection that had been severed by years of detachment. He took a deep breath, summoning the determination that had slowly woven itself through his interactions with Mia. "You're right about the importance of the deal, but these moments, this connection, this matters too." The resolution hung in the air, a declaration laced with vulnerability. Chase's expression hardened, lips pressed into a frown, the disapproval palpable. "You think you can just step away from your responsibilities? This isn't some part-time gig, Ethan. You can't just walk away when things get tough." Those words echoed a painful truth he had tried to avoid. His identity had long become a series of corporate victories at the cost of personal sacrifices. But standing here, with Mia at his side, he realized he could no longer define success through the narrow lens of profit margins and boardroom deals. "I want this connection with Mia. I'm going to foster it, no matter the cost," he asserted, the basement of his corporate armor cracking under newfound resolve. Each syllable became a step toward reclaiming his humanity, asserting that ambition need not come at the cost of personal relationships. Mia reached out, her hand brushing against his, a silent gesture of support that fueled his conviction further. The flicker of doubt in her eyes dimmed, and he could sense her bravery rising to meet his.
Chase's face twisted into a grimace of disbelief, but there was a flicker of concern buried deep within his gaze. "Are you prepared to risk everything? You know what's at stake." Ethan felt the shadows of the past drifting behind him, and for the first time, he envisioned a way forward, one anchored not solely in the relentless pursuit of success, but intertwined with purpose and genuine connection. "Everything? Maybe," Ethan replied, weighing the implications skeptically. The looming question hung between them like a storm before the rain. Was he truly ready to redefine the concept of success? The weight of Chase's expectations bore down on him, but slowly each inhale filled his lungs with courage, a testament to how his priorities were shifting. "My life has revolved around numbers and deals for too long. I can't let fear dictate my choices anymore." As Ethan dismissed Chase's persistent frown, a subtle thrill ignited within him, a burgeoning self-awareness that prompted a reevaluation of how fulfillment should truly manifest in his life. Mia's grip tightened, confidence thriving in the connection they had reignited. "Ethan, I admire this strength," she said softly, and her words wrapped around him like a warm embrace. But just as the new path seemed to unfurl ahead, Chase leaned in closer, his voice coated in steel. "You'll regret this decision. Walk away now and you'll find yourself battling for relevance. These opportunities don't wait for anyone." The ultimatum hung in the air, thickening the tension around him. Would he continue to yield to past expectations or boldly confront this new direction for himself? As Ethan contemplated the stakes and consequences, waves of vulnerability washed over him. The reflection was clear. He stood at a crossroads shaping the contours of his future. Behind him, Mia leaned in, the gentle encouragement pushing him toward a resolution. Choices swirled like a tempest within him, fueled by the desire for authenticity. And in that dizzying moment where apprehension morphed into possibility, Ethan faced the unrelenting question. Could he truly become the architect of his own happiness and redefine his ambitions? The glimmering horizon shimmered, and he clenched his fists, ready to contend with Chase's expectations, ready to validate his worth on his own terms. As he drew in his breath, summoning the strength he never knew he possessed, a new turn awaited him, the chance to confront the latent challenges within himself, a revelation inching closer to fruition as he anchored his resolve. Would he emerge triumphant in pursuing a life steeped in authentic connections, or return to the clutches of ambition that once defined him? The past echoed faintly in the distance, but the present urged him ever forward,
The tides of fate shifting toward uncertainty, Ethan stood at the precipice of choice, his heart racing as Chase's words clung to him like a shroud. The weight of expectation felt overwhelming, yet beneath it, there was a stirring, an insistent whisper urging him to reclaim who he truly was. He glanced at Mia, her presence a reminder of warmth and possibility. What now? Mia's question cut through the fog in his mind. Her eyes searched his, reflecting a blend of hope and uncertainty. There was a mutual understanding now. They had both long been adrift in a sea of obligations and unfulfilled dreams. I need to think, he replied, averting his gaze. The office felt suffocating, the walls closing in like a corporate cage. The glimmer of the outside world beckoned him. He felt as though he was standing at a threshold that demanded he step through into the unknown. But each step would require discarding the armor he had built over the years, an armor fitted for corporate battles, but ill-suited for genuine connection. Mia's hand brushed his arm, a spark of encouragement anchoring him. Talk to me, Ethan. What do you really want? The question was simple, yet profound, dismantling the layers of corporate jargon and ambition that had become his identity. He grappled with his thoughts, trying to disentangle himself from the fibers of fear that wove his life together. I want... He hesitated. What did he want? The answer that had once been obscured by the fog of ambition was now painfully close to the surface. I want to feel something real again. I want us. I want this, he confessed, the words tumbling out like a dam breaking. Mia's eyes lit up, and for an instant, the corporate facade around him felt trivial. Then let's not let Chase dictate our lives. We deserve this chance, she urged, and in her enthusiasm, Ethan felt an invigorating clarity begin to fill the hollow spaces inside him. Chase's warning echoed in his mind, a relentless reminder of what he stood to lose. But the deeper he delved into his own fears, the more he realized that losing this line of connection with Mia would scar him far more profoundly than any business deal ever could. He stepped away from the confines of the office, out into the bustling street that hummed with life, cars honking, people chatting, laughter ringing out. It was vibrant, chaotic, and utterly alive. Ethan inhaled deeply, the air rich with possibility. This was not where he wanted to be. He had long hidden himself behind the polished veneer of a corporate executive, but now he saw the opportunity to live a life that resonated with meaning. I don't want to be that person anymore, Ethan muttered, more to himself than Mia. I can't chase success at the cost of everything else. Mia nodded, acceptance radiating from her. It starts here, rebuilding from the ground up, with honesty, vulnerability, and connection. You challenged the status quo with your words, but now you need to put that into action. Face Chase, face your fears, and carve a new path. The push toward confrontation spilled from her like fresh ink on an unused page. The possibilities were thrilling, yet terrifying. Could he explain to Chase the depth of his transformation without appearing weak? Could he face the wrath of someone who had always held the reins around him? The thought of returning to the office urged him onward. He could forge a new reality, one that prioritized relationships over deals. But there was a disquieting sensation lurking in the shadows. How would Chase respond? With each step back towards that office, anxiety thrummed in his veins. Standing toe-to-toe with Chase wouldn't just be a battle of wills. It was a confrontation with his own past. This is it, he whispered to himself, adrenaline pooling in his gut. He had to make a choice. Continue to navigate through the murky waters of ambition, or confront the tides shaping his true desires. Just as he stepped inside, the door swinging closed behind him, the atmosphere shifted. Chase was watching, arms crossed, a storm of judgment brewing. The stakes loomed high, and with them, the potential for a revelation that could shift everything. Ethan realized as his heart raced that the moment had arrived. He was ready to confront not just Chase, but also the very essence of who he had become. Ethan felt the air grow heavy as he stepped back into the office, as if entering a different world altogether.
Chase's scrutinizing gaze felt like a spotlight, harsh and inescapable. The walls were still adorned with accomplishments and accolades that previously seemed like milestones, but now looked like chains, binding him to a past he was desperate to escape. "Ethan," Chase drawled, a smirk playing around the corners of his mouth. "I didn't expect to see you back so soon. You look different. Did you have a world-changing revelation out there?" Ethan swallowed hard, the contempt in Chase's voice fueling his resolve. Instead of launching into a defensive retort, Ethan took a moment to center himself. This was his moment, and he wasn't going to let Chase's sarcasm undermine the clarity that had come from his conversation with Mia. "Actually, I did," he replied, the surprise of his own steady tone striking him. "I realized that I've been living my life for others, particularly for you. I've prioritized profits over people, and that's not who I want to be anymore." Chase's smirk faltered, but quickly regained composure. "What are you saying, Ethan? You've always ridden the wave of success. Why rock the boat now?" The question cut deeper than Ethan anticipated. Was he ready to truly challenge the status quo? He had spent years rising through the ranks by adhering to the very principles that now felt like shackles. "Because the boat isn't stable when the foundation is crumbling," he said, his voice growing stronger. "I want to create a culture here that values connection, honesty, and integrity over mere numbers on a spreadsheet. If we're not building relationships, then what's the point?"
Chase's brows knitted together, a mix of confusion and irritation flickering across his expression. "This isn't some therapy session, Ethan. You're a businessman, not a social worker. You can't lead with feelings and expect results." And just like that, Ethan felt a surge of determination. The embedded belief that success was synonymous with stoicism had begun to crack under the weight of his revelation. "You're right, Chase. I've been a businessman. But at what cost? I've lost sight of who I am and what drives me, not only for me, but for everyone working here." Chase stepped forward, his posture exuding a mix of defiance and incredulity. "You want to change everything? Destroy the competitive edge we've built? You'll ruin everything I've worked for." Ruin it? Ethan's breath quickened as the reality of what Chase was suggesting hit him. The very essence of his own experience contradicted the narrative Chase spun. "You're defining success narrowly. What if there's more? What if we redefined our achievements not solely through profits, but through satisfaction and engagement?" Chase's features hardened. "And what if it fails? You're playing dangerously close to personal sentimentality. You want to risk all that we've built?" Ethan didn't flinch. "What's the point of what we've built if it's at the expense of our humanity? My prior successes, financially speaking, were hollow. I refuse to keep living that way. If my colleagues can't feel invested as people, not just employees, what's even the point?" A suffocating silence filled the room, with tension rippling through the air like electricity. In that moment, Ethan didn't know what response to expect from Chase, but he felt an unexpected surge of vulnerability, one he hadn't embraced before. Vulnerability was a risk, but so was continuing to compromise who he was meant to be. Chase held Ethan's gaze a beat too long, calculating his next move as uncertainty crossed his features. Ethan's heart pounded as he questioned whether his courage would pay off or lead to devastating consequences. He had stepped onto this battlefield equipped with new resolve, but with the distinct possibility of losing everything he had worked for. "What will it be?" Ethan's voice wavered slightly, but he pressed on. "Will you fight for something beyond the spreadsheets, or will you cling steadfastly to the past?" Chase's expression shifted, hinting at an unscripted response, one that could either dissolve Ethan's aspirations or kickstart a cascade of change. Whatever the outcome, Ethan was ready to confront the truth. But what he didn't know was how that confrontation would spark a chain of events that would alter not just his career, but unravel the fabric of Chase's empire in ways he could never have anticipated. Ethan stood in the silence, each second stretching painfully as he awaited Chase's reaction. It was a test that felt more significant than any quarterly report. He'd poured his heart into those words, yet the future of his aspirations rested in the balance, dictated by the same man who represented everything he wanted to escape. Finally, Chase's eyes flickered, like storm clouds gathering. "You think this is a game?" he sneered, stepping closer. "That you can just shake the foundations and build a so-called culture from dreams?" Ethan, taken aback, felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just about a corporate strategy. It was his identity being challenged. Yet beneath the doubt, a new solidity had taken root within him. I don't think it's a game. I'm saying I refuse to play by rules that ignore what people need. We can still profit, but let's do it with purpose. Chase scoffed, folding his arms defiantly. Purpose? You want to sell happy thoughts to clients instead of closing deals? Ethan's pulse raced. He was confronting the person who had played a key role in reshaping his life. Chase was the embodiment of everything Ethan had once aspired to be: successful, unyielding, and driven. But now, that was exactly the transformation Ethan aimed to reject. I want to sell solutions that are meaningful. Clients will come to us if they see we care. Chase scoffed, dismissing Ethan's idealism. To him, success was defined in margins and market shares. But that view felt increasingly brittle to Ethan, cracking beneath the weight of personal conviction. Determined to anchor his vision, he pressed on. We need to create an environment where our employees feel valued. That'll lead to better retention and satisfaction. A company is only as strong as its people. Chase allowed a brief silence to settle before his laughter echoed in the room. People? Emotional connections? Ethan, this is a business, not a counseling session. You're seriously risking your position. The threat hung thickly in the air. Ethan felt the pinch of fear, but it was more than that. It was a dawning realization that fueled his resolve. He could allow fear to paralyze him or let it ignite a fierce courage. He chose the latter. If I lose my position for standing up for what I believe in, then maybe I'm not meant to be in a place that doesn't align with my values. Chase's complexion grew paler, as though Ethan had pierced through his carefully cultivated facade. There was a flicker of desperation in his eyes. He unraveled the threads of his argument. Do you think those principles you're preaching will stand in the face of a recession? Loyalty doesn't pay salaries. I'm not expecting loyalty from our clients without earning it, Ethan countered, voice steady. I want values to be our compass. We can innovate our services while also nurturing an environment that fosters connection. Chase's smirk returned, but it felt hollow, desperate. You realize that this could mean facing backlash from upper management, right? They won't stand by and watch you ruin our principles.
The warning hung in the air, and Ethan felt the weight of Chase's threat, using fear as a sword. He understood now that this was about more than just him. It was about challenging a system that rewarded detachment while filtering out the human essence of business. Ethan nodded slowly, a sense of clarity washing over him. Then it's time for me to confront them. I'll stand firm against the winds of change. I will lead by example, even if it means standing alone. Chase's gaze morphed, uncertainty shadowing his features. A realization sparkled briefly. Ethan wasn't likely to fold under pressure, not when he finally recognized what he stood to lose. With determination hardening his resolve, Ethan turned to leave, each step echoing with new commitment towards his future. The obstacles ahead loomed daunting, yet he didn't feel paralyzed. Instead, he felt liberated. But as Ethan walked out, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Chase wasn't done with him, that this newly kindled tension would force him to redefine everything he understood about loyalty, success, and perhaps the cost of personal integrity. And so, as Ethan steeled himself for the challenges ahead, another battle brewed quietly in the background, one that would pit not just passion against pragmatism, but would also test the very fabric of his new reality. Would he emerge stronger, or would Chase's influence twist the narrative in ways Ethan never anticipated? Ethan stepped into the stark glow of the office hallway, the air thick with tension. With each stride, he felt both an exhilarating sense of purpose and the creeping tendrils of anxiety snaking through him. Chase's mocking laughter still echoed in his ears, challenging him as if he had ventured into enemy territory. But there was no turning back now. He had kindled the flame of transformation within himself, and he was ready to push forward. What was the next step? In the quiet solitude of his own thoughts, he realized he needed a strategy. Ignoring the fear that loomed larger than ever, Ethan knew he had to gather support. He couldn't fight this battle alone. To instigate real change, he needed allies. His first instinct was to reach out to Charlotte, a team member whose insights he had always respected. She had a knack for emotional intelligence, often reading between the lines and delivering insights that most overlooked. They had worked together on enough projects that she understood both the pulse of the company and the frustration it bred among its employees. If anyone could see the value in his vision, it was her. Ethan sent her a quick message, inviting her to lunch. As he paced in the comforting expanse of the break room, he thought about how to present his ideas. He needed to articulate the bigger picture without sounding like a naive idealist. He had to demonstrate that caring for employees would ultimately translate into profitability. When Charlotte arrived, her bright demeanor filled the small space.
Ethan greeted her with a smile, masking the anxiety tightening in his chest. After some light banter about the latest office gossip, he shifted the conversation to his aspirations for the company, framing his ideas around authenticity. "I believe we're missing something crucial," he began, his tone measured. "It's about fostering a culture that puts people first. I want to cultivate a place where everyone feels valued." Charlotte listened intently, her brow furrowing with thought. "I hear you, Ethan, but have you considered how management might react to this?" "Chase has already made it clear what he thinks," Ethan replied, his voice sharpening. "But this isn't just about my job. It's about creating a workplace that people actually want to be a part of. Happier employees lead to innovative solutions and ultimately better retention. We can't keep going like this." "And what's the plan?" she probed, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. "Let's say you convince upper management. What do you envision?" Ethan felt a surge of energy. He was mapping it out, the ideas flooding into his mind, cascading ideas that melded seamlessly together. "I envision workshops that empower creativity, regular feedback sessions, and creating a transparent communication culture. If we can prove that a happier workplace leads to better performance, we'll win them over." Charlotte's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "That's radical. People might actually go for that, but you need a solid proposal." With a newfound resolve, Ethan nodded. This was it. This was how he could harness the energy for his vision. If we can show measurable results from employee satisfaction to increased productivity, we have a strong case. Charlotte's hesitation eased. "I like where you're heading. Let's outline something together. You find the data, I'll help with the narrative, but you're still facing a lot of opposition." Ethan felt a knot tighten again. The reality of Chase and upper management loomed overhead, casting shadows on his aspirations. Yet Charlotte's willingness to engage reignited his courage. As they jotted down ideas, a thought struck Ethan. Could their efforts draw out Chase into a confrontation rather than merely a shadowy threat? He recognized that the time had come for direct confrontation, not only with management, but with the structures that had stifled growth for far too long. Ethan glanced at Charlotte, a sense of determination dancing between them. "Let's make this happen. I won't back down." Yet even as the solidarity of their shared purpose buoyed him, a flicker of doubt remained. Was he truly ready to challenge both his past and an entrenched belief system? As they delved deeper into a discussion, a single, unsettling question nagged at him. If he did succeed in altering the company's culture, what price would he pay for it?
And with that tumultuous thought echoing in his mind, Ethan understood the depth of the battle ahead was beyond mere policies. It was a fight for the essence of who he was becoming. Would he find the strength to change himself alongside the company? Or would the harder truths of ambition and sacrifice shatter his newfound resolve? The days following the lunch meeting with Charlotte blurred into an anxious haze. Ethan's determination about the project pumped through his veins, but the looming battle against Chase gnawed at his mind. He spent sleepless nights mapping out with an almost obsessive fervor every detail of the proposal, tearing through industry reports and employment studies that could support his case. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became that positive workplace cultures were not just moral choices, they were strategic business moves. Ethan immersed himself in statistics about employee turnover rates, productivity increases tied to job satisfaction, and the correlation between open communication and innovation. But with each night spent poring over data, the darker question rumbled persistently in the background. What if he failed? Would his efforts lead to ruin rather than reform? With each passing day, the cracks in his resolve began to show. During team meetings, he observed the simmering discontent among his colleagues, absorbing their frustrations as he knocked one idea off the board after another, all while stifling any urge to share his own. Swift backlash against ideas labeled too friendly or soft echoed in his ears as Chase's voice loomed heavily in his mind. It suffocated the authenticity he yearned to foster. One morning, while collaborating with Charlotte on finalizing the proposal, Ethan's nerves cracked. The office hummed around them, a stark contrast to the buzzing anxiety within him. He slammed his laptop shut with a frustrated rattle. "This isn't working." Startled, Charlotte looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the more I dig, the less I believe I'll be able to convince upper management. They're entrenched in their ways. We're just going to be smacked down like you're a voice in the wilderness," she interjected, empathy etched in her features. Ethan exhaled sharply, deflated. "Exactly. And Chase will relish every moment of it. I don't want to be the one who steps forward only to end up crushed." Charlotte leaned forward, her voice softening. "You don't have to fight this battle alone. Remember, this is about a new direction, not just confrontation. Perhaps you should consider that Chase can't hold power without an audience. If you can resonate with even a few more team members, that shifts the dynamic. As he considered her words, a seed of strategic insight started to unfurl within him. He remembered the informal chats he'd had with different members of the team when tensions would flow, a coffee here and a quick check-in there.
Sudden awareness flashed. He had already piqued curiosity among his peers, yet he had been too fearful to foster that engagement further. Maybe, Ethan said slowly, gaining traction in his reawakening purpose, it's about gathering momentum instead of going head-to-head right away. If I can get the team on board, it's not just about me taking on Chase, is it? It's about changing the narrative, proving that everyone wants this shift. Charlotte smiled, her encouragement bolstering his resolve. Exactly. Build your coalition. Once you start seeing support roll in from your colleagues, it will be harder for upper management to ignore you. Ethan felt a renewed sense of energy spiraling through him. He began crafting an informal presentation designed to communicate the values of employee engagement, one that would resonate with the heart of his colleagues, rather than the cold, hard facts he had been focusing on. It would be a heart-to-heart, not a political speech. But the moment he envisioned presenting this idea, dread mixed with anticipation. The nagging thought whispered, what if management dismissed his vision? As days turned into frantic preparation and gathering of informal feedback from the team, Ethan found himself standing at the edge of a precipice, staring down into uncertainty. It wasn't just about influencing others. It was also about discovering where he fit within this new culture he sought to create. Finally, as he prepared for an unauthoritative lunch meeting with his closest allies, he felt the gripping fear surge again. What if their insights swayed him away from confronting Chase? Or worse, what if Chase retaliated hard against his colleagues if they supported him? Ethan clenched his fists, feeling the paradox of courage and vulnerability. The time had come to seek a deeper connection with his peers, and ultimately with himself, even if it opened a door he'd rather keep closed. This wasn't just an idea, it was transformation, both for himself and the company. Would the price of authenticity be worth it, or would it drive away people he cared about most? And as he stepped into the lunch meeting with uncertainty clouding his mind, his heart pounded with a single resonant thought. He had to prepare himself for the reaction that could shift everything, whatever it might be. Ethan felt the warmth of the sun as he stepped out onto the patio, his heart racing as he stood before his colleagues. The lunch meeting was meant to be a gathering of minds and a chance for informal discussion, yet the weight of his vision loomed heavier than ever. The recent revelation had molded his resolve. He needed to share his aspirations for a new company culture, rooted in connection and empathy, risk and value. As laughter and casual banter filled the air, Ethan took a deep breath, scanning the faces of familiar colleagues. They looked eager, hopeful, and perhaps, just perhaps, ready for a change. He realized what could potentially bind them together, an understanding steeped in shared experiences of discontent within the corporate structure. Clearing his throat, Ethan raised his voice, slightly shaky but gaining strength with each word. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I've been thinking a lot about how we work together and how we can create a culture that truly values every single one of us. His colleagues turned their attention toward him, curiosity sparking in their eyes. I know many of you have felt the pressure from our workload, and it's easy to feel isolated, as if our contributions don't matter, he continued. But I believe we can build something that not only preserves our productivity, but brings fulfillment back into what we do. A moment of silence followed. Then anxiety washed over him. Would they feel what he felt? Would they share his urgency? He felt a tentative pulse of support from across the table. Charlotte's nod encouraged him. I propose we foster an environment focused on connection, where we prioritize well-being, creativity, and innovation, instead of just output, Ethan said, his voice steady. Let's create regular feedback sessions where every voice is heard, workshops to empower collaboration, and team-building activities that support emotional bonds. If we work from a space of care, then... He hesitated again, the weight of his own revelation pressing on him like a thick mantle. If we work from a space filled with authenticity, we'll be able to harness each other's potential. We'll see growth not just in profits, but in satisfaction, loyalty, and innovation. The table buzzed, and to his relief, several colleagues leaned in, their interest piqued. Could this really work? One asked. Do you think management will be on board? Another added, skepticism coloring her tone. We'll present the data, but let's focus on our shared experiences first, Ethan replied. Our narratives as employees matter. If we shape our work life collaboratively, we create a compelling case for management to reconsider how values can drive profitability. As the meeting progressed, Ethan felt a thrill course through him. His colleagues began to chime in with their own ideas, positivity spilling forth like sunlight breaking through clouds. They shared stories of moments they'd felt unseen, and new perspectives bloomed, strengthening their bond. Every voice added richness to the conversation, each story painting a more vivid tapestry of aspiration for a new workplace reality. He absorbed their enthusiasm, energized by how their collective will began to form like a living organism. This was how he could shift the tides, not through a confrontation with Chase, but in the quiet strength of unity and connection. That evening, Ethan returned home feeling the weight of doubt evaporate. The fear of confrontation still lingered, but it was now mixed with the rush of potential.
He had ignited something within his colleagues that could no longer be snuffed out easily. A week passed, and they continued to collaborate tailored discussions around their proposals. Together, they forged a comprehensive plan that demonstrated not only proposed initiatives, but also projected metrics, showcasing potential improvements in employee retention rates and overall satisfaction. Finally, it was time to present his proposal to upper management, a moment of truth that siphoned an entire ocean of anxiety within Ethan. The day arrived, and as he entered the conference room, confidence surged through him. He had gathered his allies, fortified by the trust they had built together, and they stood behind him, ready to provide support. Taking a deep breath, he began his presentation. With every statistic, every personal story from his colleagues, he painted a vision of the company that could emerge. By the time he concluded, what had begun as promotional material now felt like a manifesto, a declaration for change, backed by the very people who would be living it. Chase's presence loomed in the room, the brooding skepticism radiating from him as he listened to Ethan's every word. But this time, Ethan was prepared. With each question Chase flung towards him, Ethan remained firm, grounded not just in numbers, but in the emotional weight of shared experiences his colleagues represented. When the presentation wrapped up, Chase's eyes narrowed, revealing his intent to resist. You're basing this on feelings, Ethan. Business is about strategy, brick-and-mortar concepts, not this fluff. The collective tension in the room hung thick as Ethan met Chase's fierce gaze, no longer intimidated by his former mentor's disapproval. And yet we know that brick-and-mortar isn't sustainable if there's no foundation to support it. Businesses are built on the people who drive them. People aren't expendable assets. They are our most valuable resources, and we must treat them as such. An uneasy silence stretched between them, then murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, support from his allies, quiet affirmations that echoed the energy they had built together. A mere flicker of doubt in Chase's demeanor gave Ethan hope. Maybe enough would recognize the value of human connection over cold metrics. Days turned into negotiations. Tensions flared back and forth, as Chase and other leaders emphasized traditional values over Ethan's vision. Yet with each meeting, the foundation began to shift. Ethan remained unyielding in his pursuit, cementing relationships slowly yet surely, fostering collaboration across departments that began to echo with the new initiatives they wanted. Finally, in a pivotal board meeting, Chase conceded. Effective immediately, he announced, voice devoid of its customary arrogance, we will implement a trial of this new culture change you've presented. Ethan felt a flood of elation coursing through him, each heartbeat resonating with excitement. The color returned to his world, no longer murky gray, but infused with vibrant potential, a reflection of his hard-won transformation. As he celebrated this triumph with his colleagues, he felt gratitude wash over him. He had conquered his isolation, learned to embrace vulnerability, and discovered the beauty in collaboration over competition. The weight of ambition had shifted into a new understanding of true wealth. He had emerged not just triumphant in the realm of business, but also fundamentally changed in the core of his being. Ethan had learned that success was not solely defined by profit margins, but by the depth of connections he forged, an everlasting legacy woven through every thread of honest interaction. In the end, he knew this was only the beginning. Together, they would build a company thriving on empathy and connection, transforming not just their workplace, but their lives. Ethan smiled with satisfaction, finally feeling whole, a robust balance of ambition and authenticity. As he reflected on the path he traversed from loneliness to belonging, a powerful urge surged within him.
not just to aim high, but to ensure others alongside him could soar just as freely. And that realization became his most significant achievement. If you resonate with Ethan's journey and want to witness more transformative stories, it's time to act. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could change your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to support what inspires you. Please comment your thoughts and theories on this ending. Your perspective matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the urgency of sharing these messages.